Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday edition of the program. Monday night, we're live and national, and our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. President Trump has achieved it. There is peace in the Middle East. Now, President Trump not only flying to Israel today, but then flying to Egypt before jumping back on Air Force One and coming back home. He said a lot of things. He spoke in front of the Israeli Knesset today. He also held a peace summit, if you will, right, with world leaders from all over the place. You would have thought this was, in my opinion, it looked bigger than the G20. It looked bigger than so many of these international functions where you've got so many world leaders coming through. And again, on relatively short notice, El Trompito pulling it off. Peace in the Middle East. Listen to this.
After years of suffering and bloodshed, the war in Gaza is over. Humanitarian aid is now pouring in, including hundreds of truckloads of food, and medical equipment, and other supplies, much of it paid for by people in this room. Civilians are returning to their homes. The hostages are reuniting. I mean, it's beautiful. I'm just watching it backstage. The level of love and sorrow, I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing when you see they haven't seen their mother, their father. They haven't seen them in such a long time, and they lived in a tunnel, a very little tunnel, very deep. And the level of love is just incredible. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's, in one sense, it's so horrible that it could have taken place, but in another sense, it's so beautiful to see a new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world.
Of course, El Trompito making a plug for being a great builder, and I think he's right, honestly. I think this is truly a win. And, you know, sometimes I got to tell you, I don't know if this is uncouth, if it's crass, if it's insensitive, but I look at this whole situation, and I think to myself, how does this come about? You know, like how does it look behind the scenes? You know, when he jumps on the phone and he says, "How you doing, Bibi? Listen, Bibi, come on." And you know, Bibi's there making a very strong, impassioned, powerful case of why we have to eliminate Hamas and make sure there's, you know, no stone left unturned to eliminate this threat completely. And, you know, I could just see Trump just saying, "Bibi, we're gonna cut a deal. We got to make a deal where everybody's gonna win. Everybody's gonna wet their beak. Everybody's gonna get a chance." And I really think it's that type of deal making that. I've got to make sure the concrete guys are eating. I got to make sure the plumbing guys are eating. I'm making sure the electricians are doing what they got to do. Everybody, we all got to get along here to get this skyscraper built. To me, that's the approach. Literally creating win-wins, a lifetime of creating win-wins. And a couple of times where things don't fly right, these are the ones where people pick out and say, Trump did this, he stiffed this one, he did that, he did whatever. Right now, most of this stuff isn't even based in reality. But the ultimate bottom line, right, if you will, to me, this is I'm going to use a Trumpian term, huge, bigly, we're winning bigly. This is a huge accomplishment for President Trump and his administration, really a huge accomplishment for America. All I could say is this is one of those days, like most days for me, where it's Lee Greenwood moment, right? You know, I'm proud to be an American. Why? Because it's such an honor, right? Such an honor to see that it was this country that did this. And oftentimes it's this country that does a lot of things. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there, and they're going to say, yeah, this was an inside job, and that was that. And it's always America. It's a deep state. And, of course, somehow they'll blame the Jews. But putting all that aside, if you really focus on just history and medical innovation, automotive innovation, electricity, I mean, so many major innovations have come out of this country, which always boggles the mind when people tell me, when was America great? Honestly, I'll turn around and be like, other than the last, 15 years or so, or 20, because of, just hard push to the left, when wasn't it? Right? I mean, America's been on the cusp of greatness since its inception. The fact that America exists in itself is an act of greatness, in my opinion, right? You get this fledgling country, these 13 colonies that become the biggest superpower on the globe and maintain that position despite Joe Biden actively trying to undo that position. Even Barack Obama actively working with the Iranians, giving them back money, giving them back power to continue to make their bombs. These are things that weakened America. They didn't strengthen America. But all that being said and done, I thought it was a really remarkable thing to have President Trump in the Middle East today, and both at the Knesset, praising the historic nature of this peace deal in the Middle East, and of course, again, doing it in Egypt. Now, that's just what's going on globally. As if it weren't enough, the Schumer shutdown continues. And there are several polls out that now say that, again, according to these polls, that the people are blaming Republicans. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't believe the polls. Oftentimes, I don't believe the polls. It's my opinion, from having observed politics now for the time that I have. Oftentimes, polls are created as a tool to spread more misinformation. And that's really the bottom line. People say, you know what, we want to make sure we can say this. We want to be able to start pushing this narrative so that people can go to lunch tomorrow at work when they're opening their lunchbox and say, yeah, did you hear that news? Yeah, these Republicans, unbelievable. Even if you have a red hat wearing God and America loving conservative, doesn't matter. Right, because they'll be like, but no, it's the Democrats. No, look at the poll. The poll says, 61% of Americans say that it's because of the Republicans, not the Democrats. These things are fake and phony and fraud. And if anybody's ever wanted an example of a fraudulent poll, every time one comes out, I try my best to bring some of the many good pollsters that we have. I bring them on to explain how they finagle and fudge these numbers. It's not rocket science, but they do it all the time. And the best example we have of that, Hillary Clinton, right? I remember it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I remember she was up by some obscene number, right? She was going to win by a huge percentage. 2016, no chance. I mean, she had reserved the Jacob Javits Convention Center because it has a glass ceiling, so she could make a glass ceiling speech about becoming the first woman president, and she lost. Just FYI, breaking news, right? Now, everybody thought she was not going to win. You had all of these Democrats and others. I mean, I remember doing a TV segment once, and somebody that was on the panel I was on was a Republican commentator. And this guy back in 2015 or 16 was saying, come on, face it, Donald Trump's not going to be president. And I thought, look at that. I never had the genetic gall to say that. You know why? Not because of fear of anything. I've grown up watching Donald Trump make comeback after comeback after comeback. Build building after building after building. Skyscraper after hotel. Donald Trump is all about winning. When DJ Khaled wrote that song, all I do is win. I think he had El Trampito in mind. So how do you bet against a guy like that? You don't. And that's why today we have peace in the Middle East. And the furthest we've gotten, right? I mean, this is the most amount of partners, the most amount of input from both Arab and Muslim countries as well as others. To me, this is a significant step in the right direction. Every living hostage has now been released thanks to the negotiations by President Trump's Secretary Rubio of course, Ambassador Witkoff and others like Jared Kushner, who were all a big part of this team making this thing happen. So kudos to all of them. Anyway, I want to get some reaction to this, to the Schumer shutdown, which continues, and how Democrats are going to try and hold that hostage until No King's Day. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? No King's Day. I think they've got this incredibly wrong, and we're going to explore that with our guest who's going to be joining us momentarily. We're scheduled to have a conversation with Congressman Jimmy Patronis. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
So we're talking about what is happening with this peace in the Middle East. Of course, we're going to get to the shutdown a little bit as well. But what's interesting here is the reaction from America. Right, we've heard reaction from Palestine and from Gaza, and I'll give you a little clip of that. I got number 17 here. This is a clip on CNN of how people have been reacting as a result of the peace deal brought together by President Trump. Listen to this.
You heard the whole crowd here started to erupt into cheers of "Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump!" And I have to say, everywhere you go here, there are posters of Trump. We have seen people who have made artifacts dedicated to Trump. Fair to say that President Trump is possibly even more popular here than he is in the United States. There is just a huge amount of goodwill in this crowd because they believe and feel, as everyone has already been articulating, that it was really down to Trump that he was able to push this deal across the finish line.
Again, Clarissa Ward with CNN there. She no fan of El Trumpito for sure, but having to report the news fairly. And I think that was a pretty fair assessment. And yeah, that's been the case for a long time, President Trump being more popular abroad than he is here. Why? Two words. I'll use the Trumpian term, fake news. Fake news. Right? This is truly the reason. I think most people, I mean, I don't get into political conversations in every environment I go to, but usually when I do, it's usually somebody who doesn't really care for politics. They spend their free time watching sports, doing other things. But like other people, one day they woke up and said, I'm going to look at some politics today. And when they started to really pay close attention, they realized, man, this Trump guy isn't as bad as they've been telling me. They're telling me he's Satan. They're telling me he's Hitler. They're telling me this and they're telling me that. But he's scoring peace deals. He's doing this. He's making neighborhoods that I've been to that I know are dangerous safe again in the United States. How bad could the guy be? And then they start to think back. I remember when growing up, Trump was in all the rap videos. Trump was in all the parties. He was in all the popular culture. He was on the cover of People magazine. He was on the cover of Time magazine. He was Trump, right? Everybody loved Trump until he became a Republican. Until they said Hillary Clinton was going to wipe the floor with him and beat him in that famous poll, series of polls, right? Every poll. BS, right? The polls are BS. So I want to get your thoughts. You heard Clarissa Ward from CNN say that everybody is excited for what El Trumpito is doing in the Middle East. I want to get some of your reactions on this from our friends in the field. Let's go to our correspondents that I like to call We the People. Steve in Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Steve, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdes.
Hey, Rich, thanks for taking my call. Question. You're a historian. When was the last time the UN had a peacekeeping force?
Well, here, I'm not a historian, but thank you. I'll say this. The UN makes up their peacekeeping forces of members of several militaries, right? So everybody who's a UN member kind of chips in and says, all right, I'm going to send you 20 troops. I'm going to send you 5. I'm going to send you 100. And of course, the United States, the UK make up large parts of that. And they all wear blue helmets. And, for years, people have mistaken this for being an actual military force that belongs to this global government called the UN. But in reality, it's not, right? These are pretty sovereign guys, and their role is to keep the peace. In this deal, the UN was useless, right? The UN was useless because early on we realized that one of the UN agencies, which I forget the acronym, but it's UNRWA, UNWRA, I believe. They were in the tank for Hamas, and they were responsible for a lot of the drama that was going on and the facilitation of the terror. So I think people have lost a lot of respect for the UN. I know I have, and for my own reasons, right? I was a member of the United Nations Association for a couple of years, chairing a committee there and everything. And once you learn the inner workings and how this stuff works, it's like, oh, geez, why would anybody advocate for this? But all that being said, I say this. What we're seeing today with UN peacekeeping and whatever and whatnot, Trump decided we're going to be the peacekeepers, right? He's got, he made his own peacekeeping forces with United States troops that are going to be on the ground, making sure that nobody gets out of line. And I think that was the key issue. People don't, if you go around saying, well, Antonio Gutierrez, some people don't even know who that is, let alone think that he's really going to be able to hold it down. So I think when Trump says, all right, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to be able to let you know that nobody's going to act up. Nobody's getting out of line. We're going to keep this thing real tight here, and we're going to get this done. I think all parties, the multiple countries involved, they were able to look at this and say, wow, you know what? I think you're right. I think the U.S. is taking this seriously. I'm signing on to this deal. And I think that's why we're able to get to where we are, Steve.
You told me something I didn't know. I didn't know that Trump said that he was going to put U.S. troops on the ground.
Oh, yeah. That is part of the 20-point plan. That is,
really?
In my opinion, it's one of the reasons this works. The only reason it's working. It's the only reason. It's the only way it works.
I think that if every country in the UN had to send a proportional amount of their troops, we could pay, some poor countries to spy on the other countries to see what they're up to see if they're, collaborating. I also think they need to take on the U.S. Constitution, all of our case law as well as part of the accord.
Well, we're not making a country, I don't think, and we're not going to tell them how to run their country. We're just trying to get them to stop killing each other. So I don't know if they're going to say, hey, look, you got to, implement the U.S. Constitution. Once this peace thing goes through, there's still a whole country just like we are, right? And Israel has very similar problems. You've got Netanyahu, who is favored by many to lead and complete this war. But by others, he's got a lot of critics, and he's got a lot of lefties that are out to get him. So, their political saga will continue. Steve, thank you for the call, brother. I appreciate it. We could talk about this stuff for hours. Amigos, we continue with your thoughts, your calls, and more. And I got a few other things up my sleeve. Don't go anywhere.
Look at Rich Valdes. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
This is the day that people across the region and around the world have been working, striving, hoping, and praying for. They have done things over the last month that I think were really unthinkable. Nobody thought this could happen. With the historic agreement we've just signed, those prayers of millions have finally been answered. As you know, the hostages have been returned, and further work goes on having to do with the, sadly to say, bodies. Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East, and it's a very simple expression, peace in the Middle East, and we've heard it for many years, but nobody thought it could ever get there, and now we're there.
That, of course, President Trump again today in Egypt, joined by many world leaders as he makes this historic announcement of peace in the Middle East, announcing peace in Gaza. And big deal, in my opinion. I want to get the reaction of that and so much more on the Schumer shutdown in the next segment with Congressman Jimmy Patronis. He's joining us from Florida's 1st District. Congressman, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet. So, again, here we are. We're both witnessing what's going on in the Middle East. The president flying first to Jerusalem, then to Egypt, now en route back to Washington, D.C. right now. And all in a day's work, huh?
Well, what blows my mind, and I hope the gravity of what took place today sinks in to me, everyday Americans, because the rest of the world stopped. So if you look at every other world leader, they had 20 minutes notice, and they all got to Egypt and were waiting as the president arrived. And as the president just went through the run of show today, and he was calling out all the different world leaders that dropped everything to be there, I think we kind of take it for granted how monumental of accomplishment this was. But the rest of those world leaders knew exactly what was taking place, and they wanted to be a part of that photo op, to be there, to say they were there, to watch this historic peace moment take place. I don't think anybody else ever could have pulled it off other than President Trump, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with that, Congressman. And what's interesting to me, it's what you just said, and you said it so much nicer than I would have said it, but it's the key to this. The fact that this was, maybe a speech that was arranged in Israel and then another speech in Egypt that became this kind of international global peace summit with leaders from all over the world. And I thought that was a big deal. The president of Pakistan saying, we're nominating you again for another Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
So many. And I saw the visuals. To me, the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And seeing President Trump grinning with a thumbs up and seeing every world leader just kind of cozying up next to him, putting their thumb up, I thought it was rather endearing, got to be honest.
Well, and just to watch, I love studying people and their body language, and just to see all of those other world leaders that were there trying to, be as part of a postured moment of seeing this history come through. I mean, but I think it sends a message loud and clear. There's a unified front, and as you see, scratching heads of, all right, what's China thinking of this right now? What's Russia thinking of this right now? I think it was a good message to send, especially when you think of the richness of the money that's available in the Middle East, that now is going to be all part of this rebuilding effort in Gaza, which is going to be a real checks and balances, in my opinion. Each one of those countries, they dropped $100 million in there. That's nothing. But now they're going to have such an investment in the rebuilding of Gaza that it's going to almost have capital invested in order not to have a reaction in a form of a hostile manner. You know what I mean?
Totally. Listen, it was what I was saying earlier before you came on, that President Trump kind of approaches these deals like he's building a new building in New York City, right? And he's like, look, everybody's chipping in, so we're going to make sure it's a big, beautiful building. It's going to be great, very clean, very nice. Everybody's going to make a lot of money. I mean, I think that truly is what got everybody to the table, no?
Oh, 100%. Well, and so I was talking to my chief of staff about it today. Look, Trump is a hospitality guy. He knows how to take care of the customer, and his unorthodox way of doing business in Washington is just the norm globally. It's the norm whenever anybody's going to make an investment. And he's used to putting these once-in-a-lifetime destination properties in some of the most glorious places, beautiful places all over the world. But sometimes there's a culture there that has to be dealt with in order to bring this investment in for a landing. And this is just this guy's, this is what he does for a living, and then you see all everything that's taken place in the last 24 hours, this guy hadn't even slept, and he was running on all cylinders. It was an impressive day. It was much watch TV for junkies like me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, I had to take I'm in the New York area. I had to take a quick flight to Virginia, and it was with a layover, and coming back with a layover, and I was there from Saturday to earlier today, and I am exhausted. I am exhausted from that little trip.
Right.
And I'm thinking, President Trump, 78 years old. He's been, halfway around the world twice. And, who am I kidding here? He's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Well, a good friend of mine works in the White House. He's been there since the Bush administration. And so he's been there through, he's just a public servant in the White House. And he told me in the first Trump term, he says, nobody has ever treated me with as much respect as this guy has as I'm working in the White House. Every time he sees me, he shakes my hand. He told me, he says, the president will get in at 2:00 in the morning, and he's going to, go straight to bed. And the next thing you know, he's up at 6 and he's grinding all over again. So, I think he realizes the ability to write this chapter in history with his own influence is fleeting, and he is going to do everything humanly possible in order to leave this place, this world, in a better place than he found it.
Amen to that. Amigos, we're on with Congressman Jimmy Patronis from Florida. And Congressman, I want to get your take on what's going on with the Schumer shutdown. A bunch of polls out today that are saying it's your fault and mine, and not so much Schumer's. I don't know that I agree with that, but I want to get your take on that and everything else. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
For it.
You're educating America, and you are giving us an opportunity to speak freely. That's why I love this station, and I love your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
The American people don't like it. Even the government workers, when you talk to them, they resent being used as hostages. They resent being used as pawns by Donald Trump. And it's the kind of thing that Trump does, but the American people don't like it. And the American people, as I said, they want health care, and they want the kinds of things that we Democrats are fighting for to help working families. And when Trump uses these workers as pawns, the American people don't like it, and the workers themselves, I've talked to a whole bunch of them, and so have my colleagues, they resent it as well.
That, of course, Senator Chuck Schumer from New York making the case that Democrats are the fourth member of the Holy Trinity, and it is the Republicans who are evil and shutting down their beloved government. I want to get some reaction to that from our guest, Congressman Jimmy Patronis from the great state of Florida. Congressman, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, says that this might be the longest shutdown in American history. Chuck Schumer says it's all your fault. What's going on here?
So, Schumer, look, all these guys put on their pants just like anybody else, one leg at a time. Schumer was cooperative back in March when this same exact scenario took place. Unfortunately, Schumer got eviscerated by his base, and now you have what have you had emerge since that last time? You've got a socialist candidate for mayor in New York who is on the verge of being the strongest Democrat in America, which right now arguably Schumer is. And you got AOC who has made her investment in this budding candidate from New York. So now Schumer is created some vulnerabilities that he can't be seen aligned with Trump. Heaven forbid that he is trying to keep a functional government in place. Heaven forbid he should try to be responsible. And so Schumer himself is able right now to take the heat. But, where the heat is not welcome and where we've got to do a better job explaining it is to the citizens of Georgia or the citizens of Arizona, where you've got Democratic senators in states that went for Trump last time, and get the attention of these folks and make sure that their senators do the right thing. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I was in the restaurant business for 30 years. I didn't ask somebody when they walked through the door if they were Democrat or Republican. I just took care of the customer. Okay. But now you've got an environment right now where these guys need to put their partisan differences aside. And unfortunately, Rich, it's all about these guys just wanting to be able to control the agenda. It's all about wanting to have power. And, they're not thinking about our kids. They're not thinking about our military. There's just a very selfish movement afoot with these guys, and if they can create paralysis, they're fine with that. Unfortunately, I think Chuck Schumer, he lives in the Democratic sanctuary. There's no pressure you can put on him. I've been giving out his phone number all the time, but the Mark Kellys of the world and the John Ossoffs of the world and the Raphael Warnocks, we need to be lighting those guys up, and that's what I hope your listeners will start to work with us. Really starting tonight. That'd be great.
Amen. I'm with you, because you know what? It's exactly what you're talking about. You're saying Senator Chuck Schumer, who is, I don't know, older than everybody, right? He's been in politics since I was a little kid, and I remember that very, very clearly. And he's afraid of AOC and the Democrat Socialists of America, and they're putting him under pressure, and he's failing to rise to the challenge of having courage to do what's right. And we need to do the same thing, right? We need to do the same thing to make sure that everybody knows that people can win elections and people can lose elections. It can't just be the DSA.
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%. But is it hitting home yet? I care about a functional government because I'm foregoing my pay, and a lot of members are. If we can't do our job, then we shouldn't get paid. So, we're not taking a paycheck, and especially when it was to the fact that we had our service members weren't getting a paycheck. I damn sure didn't want one. But this is where Trump is thinking outside of the box. Because, again, remember I told you Trump's a restaurant guy. He wants to take care of the customer. He likes to make people happy. And you know what? He is not going to disappoint our men and women in uniform, especially at such a critical time that they're in right now, as we're seeing peace around the world in ways we've never seen it before.
Yeah. Now, Congressman, I want to get your take on Speaker Johnson. Speaker Johnson saying this might be the longest shutdown in American history if action isn't taken. Check this out.
Ending this shutdown is not a one-party exercise. Republicans do have control of Congress, quote unquote, but it still takes 60 votes to pass a funding bill in the Senate. All of this is the way the founders intended the process to work. Any Democrats who suggest otherwise are willfully misleading the American people. We're barreling toward one of the longest shutdowns in American history unless Democrats drop their partisan demands and passed a clean, no-strings-attached budget to reopen the government and pay our federal workers.
So there you have it, Speaker of the House putting it on the line. And I think he's been very active, as you and many of your colleagues have been as well, making sure that this story is being told the right way. But what do you think is actually going to be the next step?
Well, the Speaker's a saint. And he is very accessible to his members. I called him yesterday with some questions regarding of a constituent that reached out to me. And the guy's he's a workaholic, but he also has great patience. The Speaker brings up some good concerns, and here is a fight that we're having as the Democrats are arguing for $1.5 trillion in new spending, and that would be, this dragging out of the enhanced subsidies and also opening up greater access for illegals to access the U.S. healthcare system. Those end up being cash plays for big blue states where they're using the encounter data of a body that's illegal to count towards dollars they can pull down from the federal government. So this turns out to be a big blue cash grab from the Californias and the New Yorks and these other states we're never going to live in. So you've got that's taking place, but it's a message that, at the end of the day, does it sound harmful? No, but once you start getting to the dollar amount of it, hopefully you get people's attention. And I think this is where the speaker feels like this could go for a very long time, because they're arguing we need enhanced subsidies for Obamacare. Well, you already have subsidies for Obamacare. Only reason why they're enhanced is because COVID. And I don't know about you, COVID was back in 2020.
Yeah. And something that's going down this week is more No Kings protests. And many on the left are saying that is when we're actually going to end this whole thing, if at all. So what are your thoughts? Does the No Kings protest spark the beginning of the end of the shutdown, or is it the beginning of more drama?
I think it's going to create more drama. They definitely want to have the visual of this No Kings protest, and Bernie wants to go out and lead the charge and wants to try to, illustrate a leadership environment in Washington, D.C., where it's like a dictatorship. And they want to use this as part of their messaging. And it's unfortunate. What's crazy, Rich, is I did not realize until I took this job how many of the protesters that show up at these different events, they're paid to be there. We go and we create a paid for optic so the media can go and report on these ridiculousness of folks that are showing up, because it's how they're paying their bills. It's how they're paying their cell phone bill. It's how they get access to Instagram. It's because they come and show up, and they don't care about the message they're protesting for. Just pay me my money and I'll show up as a warm body and say ridiculous things in front of the cameras when they come out. And so this is what this King's event's going to be. It'd be interesting, how many of those people that show up are actually interested in being there, and how many of them had their hotel, their airfare, and their meals paid for to show up in Washington, D.C.
Excellent point, Congressman Jimmy Patronis. Let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you're doing in Florida and in the nation's capital.
Sure. So it's at Jimmy Patronis, JimmyPatronis. My DMs are open. I love X. I use it all the time, and it's a great way to hear what's important to your constituents. But outside of that, it's a great place to get some ideas from. So please, if I ever can be of service, reach out to me, and especially when you want to see the best beaches in the whole world, you just come to Northwest Florida.
All right, amigos, give him a follow. I just did. You should too. Congressman, thank you so much. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. God bless.
Rich, it was an honor to be with you. Take care.
Likewise. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions coming up right now.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes keeping you company, live and national, 833-482-5337. And I want to know, what do you think about what we're discussing tonight? We're talking about these upcoming No Kings protests, everything that President has done in the Middle East, and so much more. Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I think that the Democrats have become a total embarrassment to the country. They're fighting people in the streets that are trying to clear the crime out of there, for instance, and every opportunity they get to try to knock down Trump a notch, they go about doing it. They're going to do it before they even do it, and it's an embarrassment.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. You look at the things that come out of their mouth and you think, my goodness, are we on the same team? Do we live in the same country? Or do we share the same allegiance to the same flag? The amount of distance that's come between the left and the right, the two parties, it's palpable. And the reason it's so vast isn't because one side, got up and walked away. It's because one side just turned its back on loving the country. There was a time when both Democrats and Republicans were all about loving America. Not so much the case. I'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program. We're live and national. Happy to be with you this Monday night. And here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And America has to stop romanticizing radical revolutionaries. It's something that has to end. This is the reason why we have the problems that we have in Gaza. It's the reason we have a lot of problems in a lot of places. I would say there's not much of a bit of difference between Zoran Mamdani, AOC, and the people in Hamas. They're all motivated by the same thing, this fighting the imperialism. Now, many, a lot more learned than I for sure, have made the case connecting Marxism and Islamism, right? The people that are studying Karl Marx and using that revolutionary ideology to have government control as the end-all, be-all of everything, along with the people that are perverting their religion and turning it into and weaponizing their religion to turn it into something as an instrument of war, right? And that's really what it is. And when you tie the Islamist to the Marxist, you get so much of what we're seeing today, right? I say you throw in a dash of Nazism and voila, there you go. Now, that's kind of unique to what's happening in Gaza, but it's not unique to what's happening all over the rest of the country. And I brought this up because, yes, today is the big day. It is the big day of peace, right? President Trump deserves all the kudos in the world for that. And including from many of his colleagues, not the least of which was Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu today was at the Knesset with Trump, where he was invited, and he gave his speech. And it really was remarkable because these world leaders were all there, people that were in the past, I think, critics of Donald Trump and may likely continue to be critics of Donald Trump. But on this particular issue, they stood there shoulder to shoulder, side by side with him, as did the Israelis today in the Knesset. And kudos to El Trompito again. Why? Because he's my commander-in-chief. I'm going to call him the commander-in-peace because he's brought about peace in the Middle East and he's coalition building like I've never seen in my lifetime. So kudos to President Trump. But I have a clip here of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Several clips I have. But the one I want to play for you is a short one. And he talks about, the importance of winning. He talks about a number of things. And there's another clip, I'm just looking for it real quick, where President Trump talks about this is the golden age of Israel in the Middle East. Listen to this.
It's an incredible triumph for Israel and the world to have all of these nations working together as partners in peace. And it's pretty unusual for you to see that, but it happened in this case. This was a very unusual point in time, a brilliant point in time. Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East. It's going to work together.
President Trump, the golden age has come to Israel. Meanwhile, again, as I mentioned earlier, you've got Prime Minister Netanyahu, who, again, is just taking a victory lap over the decisive victory that they've had here. Listen to this.
These monsters take babies as hostages. In response to this barbaric attack on October 7th, Israel did what it had to do. With indomitable courage, we set out to defend our people, to defeat our enemies, and to release our hostages. Our heroic soldiers fought like lions. They fought on the front lines of civilization and barbarism. Israel achieved amazing victories over Hamas and the entire Iran terror axis. Sinwar, Dev, Khania, Nasrallah, Assad, they're all gone.
So that's Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, this gets bigger. Of course, you've got the president of Pakistan nominating President Trump again for a Nobel Peace Prize, which I think this time the world will likely not be able to, at least the Nobel Peace Prize Committee will not be able to ignore. But you had all these world leaders, right? President Trump literally assembling something, in my opinion, larger than like a G20 summit type of thing in Egypt, just to sign this peace deal. Because in reality, what the G20 does, or similar groups, a lot of this stuff is perfunctory, right? A lot of this stuff is pomp and circumstance. What happened today was ceremonial for sure. It's politics, but it was real, and it's been real for a number of days. Every living hostage was released. All of these parties are at the table. They've ponied up. They've put money into the pot so that we could achieve something. They're making an investment in something that we all want to be lasting peace. President Biden tweeting out, not quite thank you, President Trump, but definitely words of encouragement there about this situation, as President Obama did as well, even though he tried to, take a slight swipe at El Trumpito. I mean, the partisanship isn't going to go away, but the fact that they're acknowledging it lets you know this is genuine, this is an achievement, and even if it's kicking and screaming and begrudgingly, former presidents are going to be recognizing it. And what the situation here, I want to double down on. It's important that we have somebody like President Trump, in my opinion, who is a New York builder, who's built skyscrapers and casinos and hotels, and he knows how to build, and he knows what it's like to get a building done, start to finish. You have to deal with a number of different unions, a number of different vendors when you are the general contractor, right? And I think President Trump has had to do that, and there's probably no trickier place to do it than New York City. And that unique skill set, I think, lends itself very well to what he's doing here in creating peace. As interesting or as ironic or, funny as that may sound. But I think that's a reality. And it's that same edge that you need when you're identifying the adversaries amongst us and how to beat them, right? Beat them not only at their own game, which you have to do at times, but making them, like Saul Alinsky said, making them live up to their own book of rules. And all of these things have to be employed to bring about what you saw today, this Peace 2025. President Trump on stage with, 30 world leaders or something like that. Or at least there was like 30 people, many of them world leaders representing different nations. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Canada, the President of Pakistan, and so on. So I started by saying that the United States, or at least everybody, not just America, but I'll start with America, need to stop romanticizing radical revolutionaries like the ones in Hamas, like the ones anywhere else. It's these radical revolutionaries that are best at evoking emotion. And it's those emotions, when they're able to pull at the heartstrings, that they're able to get people to feel passion, right? And it's this passion that everybody has passion. For many of us, it's a passion for liberty. It's a passion for all things good and holy that God gave us. And for others, it's a passion to be indignant. It's a passion to constantly find someone to fight against, right? And this is what the Marxist lives by. This is what they do. There has to be something that they're fighting against, some sort of oppression that they're resisting against, that they can become the revolutionaries to overthrow this imperialist system, right? It's the same line of crap each time, but yet it seems to work, and it's working still. So straight ahead, we're going to talk about how to stop romanticizing some of these radical revolutionaries with Gordon Chang. Gordon Chang is, in my opinion, the utmost expert on geopolitics, in particular Asia. And I want to talk about President Trump's latest threats to China, saying, hey, look, more tariffs for you. If you can't figure out how to play this game, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
President Trump is threatening a 100% tariff on China following their move to tighten exports of rare earth minerals. For more, President Trump is threatening a 100% tariff on China following their move to tighten exports of rare earth minerals. For more, let's bring in the Heritage Foundation chief economist and former Labor Bureau Commissioner nominee, E.J. Antoni. E.J., thanks for joining us. This deal with China, how much leverage does the administration have? How much of a problem is it for the White House?
Well, the administration certainly has more leverage today than they did several months ago. And the reason for that is we managed to iron out a lot of trade deals with different countries and groups of countries like the EU, for example. And so the more of those ducks we get in a row, so to speak, the more leverage that gives us against China, because we already have these different trade agreements. It makes it easier to isolate China. And the more isolated they are, again, the more leverage we have and the easier it is to get a trade deal that's not just on China's terms, but that's actually mutually beneficial.
Especially on rare earth, though. That is a pressure point for the U.S., isn't it?
Oh, certainly. But so rare earth is kind of a misnomer because we think rare earth and we think they're just not, there's not a lot of this stuff in the world. In fact, there is. The difficulty with rare earths is that they're never found in concentrations. In other words, you have to process a tremendous amount of earth to find these trace minerals in there. So China's not the only game in town when it comes to rare earths.
All right. So President Trump levying 100% tariffs as a threat on China to try to get them in line. I don't know what's going to get China in line, but I want to get some reaction to that and everything else that's going on geopolitically from our guest. Our guest is Gordon Chang. He's been here before. He's always welcome back. He is the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. He's also got a number of other books, China's Going to War and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, as well as The Coming Collapse of China from many years ago. Gordon's been writing on this for a very long time. Gordon Chang, welcome back, sir.
Oh, thank you so much, Rich.
So let's dig in. You heard this clip with Dr. E.J. Antoni weighing in on this, and from the financial side. But from the geopolitical side, I think President Trump has been pretty I'm going to say consistent with his approach to trying to get China to budge a little bit. It seems like it's paying off. I just don't know if it's paying off quick enough. What do you think of this latest threat?
Well, President Trump had to threaten the 100% tariffs, and the reason is that the Chinese were continuing to press him. And that was clear on Wednesday when they issued their enhanced regulations on rare earths and related materials. So China wasn't going to stop until President Trump made them stop. And although the markets didn't like it, it was something that absolutely had to be done.
Let's talk about, the effect, and I agree with you, but I'm saying, how do we, is this going to be enough to get China in line?
Probably not. And the reason is it has nothing to do with us, but it has a lot to do with the internal turmoil at the top of the Communist Party, where there is intense infighting. And in that type of situation, I don't think anybody really can compromise with outsiders, especially with the United States. So they can't deal constructively. They cannot negotiate in good faith. And so I think that the best that President Trump can do is protect the United States until China gets to a point where they can actually talk to us.
So, Gordon, let's talk about the root of this, because, I feel like there's always going to be political tensions in any situation. both externally and internally. But in this case, it seems like they're becoming a little bit more intense in China. What's that looking like? I know Xi has faced on a number of occasions his unpopularity, and there's been I'm going to say, a threat or mention or rumor of people trying to potentially take him out, and then him doubling down, saying he's supreme leader for life or whatever his official title was. So what do you make of all that?
Well, the rumors range from everything. That Xi Jinping is as strong as ever to Xi Jinping's going to lose at least 2 of his 3 posts this month. The Communist Party's Central Committee is going to hold what's called its 4th plenum starting on the 20th. And some people think that Xi Jinping is not going to survive that meeting. He's going to lose. He's no longer going to be General Secretary of the Communist Party. And even more important, he's no longer going to be the chairman of the party's Central Military Commission. The only thing that he may keep is the state presidency, which is in the Chinese system ceremonial and confers almost no power on the person who holds it. So we just don't know. Xi Jinping has been fighting back. There are signs that he has indeed lost control of the military, and we have some corroboration on that. There are also signs of intense infighting in civilian circles, although we don't have as much information about that. But clearly, Xi Jinping is in no mood to deal with President Trump or anybody else on a good faith basis. So until that turmoil is put behind the party, we're just going to be bystanders.
Gordon Chang, just to put a pin in this, I remember hearing about the conflict a few years ago. We might have had a conversation about it between one of the leaders of the PLA, the Chinese military, and President Xi, and wondering, is that the same conflict that you're hearing about, or is it a new military leader that's trying to position themselves to oust him?
Yeah,
potentially.
Basically, we're talking about the same individual, which is General Zhang Yaoshao, who is the #1 uniformed officer, who is the first vice chairman of the party's Central Military Commission. And he is not very happy with Xi Jinping for a lot of reasons. And we have seen over the course of, let's say, the last 9 months, a year, a lot of Xi Jinping loyalists lose their positions. And people have said that Xi Jinping was sacking his own people, which is not an unreasonable view. But considering all else we know about what's happening in the Chinese military, it's more likely that General Zhang has been getting rid of Xi Jinping's loyalists and supporters. And so that means Xi has probably lost the support of the most important faction in the Communist Party, which is the Chinese military. Remember, China doesn't have a state army. It has a party army. It's a big private army. And the PLA reports to the party, and right now it does not appear to be reporting to Xi Jinping. Excellent.
Gordon, stick with us. We're going to come back and continue our conversation on China and a couple other items I want to run by you. Amigos, we're coming right back with one of my favorites on China, Gordon Chang. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if a viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
President Trump says the U.S. is imposing an additional 100% tariff
on imports from China starting November 1st. Today's announcement follows heavy losses on the stock market. The sell-off was triggered by an earlier threat from the president to unveil a massive increase of tariffs on China. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now with more on this. So, Kelly, the big question is, why was the president motivated to do this?
So it was in response to China saying that they were going to put even more restrictions on rare earth minerals. Remember, China has about 70% of the global supply of rare earths. It's important for everything from your cars to your computer to the chips that NVIDIA makes that power the AI revolution. And it's really been at the heart of these trade tensions. It did seem like both sides had made progress over the last few meetings, but then China coming out and saying this, the president frankly had to do something. Every analyst that I'm talking to has said, the U.S. did need to come and sort of hit back on that with this.
Okay, and we do want to ask about the response to the stock market.
Yeah.
Why did it come in so strong?
So 3 different reasons. One, these rare earths, okay, like I just said, they power the AI revolution. So your stock market is pretty much driven by your AI stocks. And the tech stocks lost over $770 billion in value today. So that's one reason. Another is we've been here before. Investors have lived through Trump 1.0, and they saw how long it took a deal for China and the U.S. It took over 2 years. And then finally, if you've now got a 100% tariff on everything coming from China, the Fed does not have information on your CPI and your jobs report because the government is shut down. They may say, we are going to wait and see, and you may not get that interest rate cut everyone is expecting at the end of October.
So that's a little bit about, again, a little additional insight into what's going on with these tariffs. And I agree, very, very important, has to be done. But I want to talk about the impact of what exactly is going to happen if we go down this road, right? What happens? Do we face a shortage of the ability to fuel our upcoming AI revolution? I don't know, but I want to get with Gordon Chang to get the scoop on that. Gordon Chang is back with us. You can get him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. And Gordon, you heard all of these scenarios up to and including not having CPI data and whatnot. What do you make of that?
Well, certainly we're going to go through a lot of trade friction right now. And it's not just because there is infighting at the top of the Communist Party. It's also because Xi Jinping, who is still the paramount figure, I think is not in touch with economic reality. And he doesn't understand the leverage that the United States has. So he's going to push too far. And that means Trump is going to have to defend ourselves. And this is going to be really ugly. Now, we have had misguided China and trade policy for decades, so we Americans can't think we're going to get out of this without suffering a lot of pain. But we're going to have to do it unless we want to give up our sovereignty and give up everything to China. And I don't think Americans are willing to do that.
No, nor do I. Now, when we're talking about pain, I think it's important to look at all the factors that are here, right? I want to know what you think about like how difficult and how severe this is going to be. B, I also want to get your take on does this, if Trump pushes hard enough, does China relent a little bit and then just kind of switch gears just for their own paper tigerness, if you will, and say let's go back to looking at Taiwan because their incursion into Taiwan has been imminent. I don't know, for a number of years. And it hasn't happened. I don't know that it's going to happen. How do you think that factors in, if at all?
Well, I don't think China is going to start hostilities by launching an invasion of the main island of Taiwan. And there are a lot of reasons for it, including the Chinese military right now is a mess. But China is involved in some very belligerent activities from South Korea in the north to Australia in the south, but especially in the South China Sea against the Philippines. And just about 24 hours ago, we had another Chinese ramming of a Philippine ship. And if one of those incidents goes wrong, I don't think China can back down. So we're looking at, I think, probability of war because, we have to ask ourselves one question. When in history has a militant regime that's talked about going to war all the time, that is actually engaged in the fastest military buildup in decades, when has it not gone to war? And so we've got to be very concerned that is something in the Philippines and the South China Sea will just become region-wide war.
Now, if that in fact happens, Gordon Chang, what's the the implication there? It seems like it's a worse case scenario than what we're currently threatening.
Well, yeah, I think nothing's off the table right now. And remember, we got a war in Eastern Europe. We have a war that is winding down in the Middle East, at least for the moment. But we've got insurgencies in North Africa that look like wars. We still have Thailand and Cambodia going after it. India and Pakistan is always a problem. And if you have a big war in East Asia, people are going to start to say, this looks like World War III.
Yeah. So you don't think that the peace deal that was highlighted in the White House between India and Pakistan is going to be a lasting one?
Well, I think it'll last for some time. But if there is a war someplace else, you probably will see things heat up around everywhere. That's the way these things start, that once you have disturbances get out of control, then they just seem to spread. And, peace is contagious, and so is war. And, I hope that we're on a good path with the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. But we know in the last few hours, Hamas has gone to killing people again in Gaza. So this is something that we've got to keep an eye on. I don't think that, the war is over there yet. Not quite yet. It's on the way to being settled, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. And you know what? I have a clip I want to play for you. It's from the son of the founder of Hamas, a guy named Mossab Hassan Youssef. And he's basically kind of saying, similar to what you're saying, that it likely isn't over. And he makes a different argument that it can never be over because that's the nature of Hamas. This is Mossab Hassan Youssef.
The peace deal, is it a peace deal, Mossab, or is this anything but?
Peace, this is a very big term. They are already talking about peace. This is just, at best, I would say, a ceasefire. And according to Hamas books, this is only a truce. They cannot make peace with Jews. They cannot make peace with Israel. This is their ideology does not allow them to sign a deal with Israel. If Hamas ideology agreed to making peace with Israel, there would be peace long time ago. This is the main obstacle in front of Hamas Shura Council. It's the religion. It's the Quran. It's the Islamic ideology. So at best, Hamas can have truce with Israel for 10 to 15 years. This is what the Islamic law allows them to have with kuffar, with basically infidels, non-Muslims in a state of war. The most they could do, what Muhammad did back in the day with the Meccans, it was a truce, 15 years maximum, and they are willing to renew it, but they can never call it peace. They don't make peace with their enemies.
Gordon Chang, I think this is an important difference. It could be a semantical difference because, again, I think the reason they're doing it now may be fatigue. It could also be that they have something to gain here that makes them, had brought them to the table. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the important thing here is, that clip is certainly right. Hamas, as an organization, will never make peace with Israel. The difference at this point, though, is that President Trump has gotten the Gulf Arabs on side. And they can bring a lot of pressure, which will eventually, I hope, lead to the end of Hamas. So that's a real possibility. And that's what makes today different than, for instance, the events in the past. But, as I said, it's a ceasefire. It's not, the war's not over yet.
Yeah, I just saw some reports as well about additional, skirmishes that are kind of bubbling up in the area. Gordon Chang, I want to thank you for being here and weighing in on this stuff. Let everybody know how they can, follow you and keep in touch with you and all of your archived work.
Yeah, on X, it's at Gordon G. Chang, GordonGchang, and I archive all my articles for free on my website, which is www.GordonChang.com.
Outstanding. Well, my best to you and to your lovely wife, and thank you for being here. Godspeed, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Rich. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to everything that's going on in America, all over the world, and in your neck of the woods. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Call now 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, amigos. So New York City is facing similar problems to the rest of the world. Islamism, radical Marxism. And again, I repeat, we have to stop romanticizing radical revolutionaries, whether it's Che Guevara, whether it's Zoran Mamdani, or any others, right? Trying to find a silver lining in these crazies is crazy. Anyway, in New York City, a Asian politician, Senator Steve Chang, came to the support of Curtis Sliwa as he opens his 10th headquarters in New York City in this race. Listen to this.
These new kids listen to somebody who comes along and sells them a fantasy. You don't have to pay for anything. Everything should be free. Let everybody else pay for it. Who's going to pay for this? You should ride the trains for free. You should get your food for free. You don't have to pay your landlords. This fantasy is being sold to our new generation of kids who does not understand where our great city came from. It came from the backs of great police officers, FD, sanitation, everybody working together, all the tradesmen, everybody worked together to build this city. Led by great people, led by a bunch of great people. And that's what we need today, is great leadership. So now, we have that here today. And he already spoke. So, now I implore everybody, this is the most important thing. We have enough votes. It's a matter of whoever mobilizes their supporters to get out there to vote. That's ultimately going to decide who is going to take this race, and that is going to be Curtis. Because we are motivated, we are going to go out there. We gotta tell our friends and family, get out there and vote for what is right for you. And today we know what's right for them.
That is, again, Senator Steve Chang in New York City, and coming to have the back of Curtis Sliwa and another endorsement for Sliwa. And Sliwa is steadily racking up these endorsements and opening headquarters, Sliwa for mayor offices in various parts of the city, which I think is interesting because you don't see many Zoran Mamdani offices. You don't see any for Andrew Cuomo. And you see Sliwa all over the place, literally pressing the flesh, meeting the people, shaking hands with voters. Last I checked, that is the way to win an election. Now, of course, the politicians will tell you, no, you're just going to get, you just tell people what to do, right? And I'll tell you, many people are out there in New York City right now telling people the most important thing you can do is make sure that this communist doesn't win. I would disagree with that, and I would say we had a communist mayor already. The most important thing we can do is make sure we elect a Republican. And not because I like Republicans better, because this Republican, he's tried and tested on these issues. He's excellent on the issue of public safety. He's excellent on the issue of making New York City more affordable, and he's put a plan in place for it, right? These are not just pie-in-the-sky ideas. This is somebody who you could look at his policy papers from the last election. Now, people say, oh, but he wears a little red hat. And I would say Rudy Giuliani wore an FDNY cap. Mayor Adams wears an NYPD cap. Everybody wears some sort of hat because his is red. All of a sudden, it kind of disqualifies him. I think it's part of his trademark. He is an eccentric New Yorker that has a penchant for rescue animals, by the way. But I don't think any of these things disqualify him. I'll say what I think disqualifies Andrew Cuomo. The fact that not only was he ousted as governor and now he wants to be mayor, but the fact that he's already went head-to-head against Zoran Mamdani, and he lost by more than a dozen points. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would not take the odds. I would say, listen, this guy's already ran. Why on earth would I give him another shot? Doesn't make sense. Now, I don't mean like he ran last time for mayor and he's running again. No, I mean he ran a few months ago. What has Andrew Cuomo done? Nothing. Andrew Cuomo's the guy who signed no cash bail into law in New York State. It's the reason we have the crime that we have. How on earth could anybody think that this guy is the answer? Number one. Number two, Curtis is racking up people from across the aisle, right? Councilman Bob Holden, a Democrat, supporting Curtis Sliwa. You've got Democrats all over the city that are supporting Curtis Sliwa because they've known him for decades and they appreciate the work he's done with the Guardian Angels. Now, I understand that there's a few people that, out of hatred for communism, are considering voting for somebody with nearly identical policy positions like Andrew Cuomo. But, I mean, come on, people. Let me buy you a cafecito and wake you up. There is no difference between these guys. Each of them has doubled down on sanctuary cities. Each of them has doubled down on making sure that you allow criminals on the street. No cash bail. Is that what we need in America? Is that what we need in New York City? I think not. Anyway, your calls and more coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let's check in with Doug in Clifton, Virginia. He's calling us from WMAL. Doug, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, I spoke with you last week, and I said that I would be a little cautious about celebrating before the hostages come home. I am so happy to admit they came home and things are looking great. This is a great day to celebrate. But as your earlier guest said, this is just the first day. There's a lot more to occur. And I remember Ariel Sharon, the former general and Israeli prime minister, was asked, and it was on WMAL, when will there be peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians? And what he said was, the biggest obstacle isn't the Israelis and the Palestinians, it's the Muslims outside of Israel and the Palestinian territories. And until the Muslim world as a whole accepts the existence of Israel, there will never be peace, because they will always be able to send in money, arms, and bad actors to create violence and to create war. So today's a great step with so many Arab nations signing on, but we still have Iran. We still have groups inside of Qatar that are looking to create problems. So again, I would celebrate, but again, this is only a first step.
Yeah. Well, Doug, I think I agree with you. I think President Trump said that as well, highlighting that today is the first day of phase 2. And of course, I mean, when you're dealing with negotiating with terrorists, right, with Hamas, it's a risky proposition, right? You never know what you're going to get. I think the only way they were able to get to where they are is, like you said, because of all of the regional Arab partners being on board. You're right. Iran will likely never be on board until the current regime is toppled or dies or is taken out by their people. But I take the wins as they come in. I'm not naive. I want to celebrate the things that we can celebrate, and we'll worry about what we got to worry about tomorrow. Doug, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Kudos to you, and Mazel Tov. What else do we got here? We got Frank in Evergreen, Tony's in Montreal, Ron in Coleman, but with 30 seconds, not even, it would be unfair to bring you on. So stick with me, folks. I'm going to do more calls on the other side of this 7-minute stop set, so bear with me. Amigos, there is more to come straight ahead, but for some of you, this is the end of the road. So I say, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. Everybody else, I'll be right back. Live from the city that never sleeps.
17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of our program. 833-482-5337 is our phone number, 833-4-VALDES. It is Monday night. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and we are live and national, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Give me a call. Of course, the big stories of the day, the Schumer shutdown continues. That is in full swing. President Trump is overseas, on his way back from overseas. I'll get into that in a moment. We've been talking about that most of the evening. But the this shutdown is still a thing. Speaker Johnson calling it the longest shutdown in history if they don't put an end to it. And Chuck Schumer also taking to the microphone saying that Trump is using the American people as hostages and using government workers as hostages. So, just bad timing, I think. He said that yesterday. Of course, we had the release of the hostages today. Then we had the peace summit, if you will, that President Trump, he didn't host it, right? It was really the president of Egypt that hosted it, but definitely organizing it, putting it together. And the president of Pakistan making the case at that event that President Trump should be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So many interesting things that are going on here. I think we have a clip of that. Listen to this.
Wonderful candidate for Peace Prize because he has brought not only peace in South Asia, saved millions of people, their lives. And today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, achieving peace in Gaza is saving millions of lives in the Middle East. Mr. President, I would like to salute you for your
Asif Ali Zardari. He is the current president of Pakistan, and again going hard for his homie Trump right there, who brought some peace to his country with President Trump making the deal between Pakistan and India, ending their conflict. And President Zardari ending those comments, it just sounded terrible, that's why I got out of it, but ending those comments saying that it was President Trump who ended 7 wars and now an 8th in this one. And I agree in large part here that President Trump deserves an incredible amount of kudos, and I think he's been getting them. To be fair, I think even the left within the media has been acknowledging this stuff, which is great. That doesn't mean that we're going to have a utopia, that we're going to have heaven on earth. I think there's nuance to this stuff. You want to stop a lot of the killing. I think we're stopping a lot of the killing. We want to stop all the killing. I hope and pray that that's the case. And I believe we're getting closer and closer to that. And today marked a milestone, a historic moment, in so much as having all of these world leaders say, we're all in here. We're all in. We're all invested. We're looking to make this happen. We want to be a part of the photo op. We want to be a part of this. And in essence, they own a piece of it. And it's ownership that creates that type of pride, right? You take care of your lawn when you own the place. If you're just renting the place, you're like, let me call the super, let me call the landlord, let me call whoever. They better take care of this place. But when you own something, you become a lot more careful of how you take care of it. I think of most cases, right? Some people are slobs no matter what. But I just think of how people treat rental cars versus how they treat their own car. I wash my car weekly for the most part. And And when I go to the car wash, you see a lot of guys there that are, and women, but mainly guys, and they're washing their car, whatever kind of car they have, and they take so much pride in it. After they pay for a whole car wash, they'll pull over, just right outside the car wash and, grab a little towel, start spraying stuff on their tires, doing their own little detailing. In addition, above and beyond. Why? Because they take pride in that stuff. They own that car. They love that car. They want it to look good. And that's something simple like having a car. Just imagine something more complex, something more prestigious, like being part of a global peace initiative that's truly bringing in peace, right? I think that's something to write home about. So kudos to all of them. Excellent job. Now, let me see. Oh, we have another interesting story here. This is a good one. We have fat troops in Texas. Now, this is an interesting one because the fat troops have been asked to stop because the Texas these are Texas National Guardsmen, and they're saying, you know what, you're going to have to fall back. You can't be fat and in the National Guard. Mr. Good, do we have the audio? All right, go right ahead.
Some Texas National Guard members deployed to Illinois have been sent home because they appear to be overweight. A spokesperson for the Texas Military Department confirmed to Tax and Purpose that a small group of the 200 National Guard members have been replaced after they were found to not meet military weight standards. The troops were mobilized for an initial period of 60 days and will be under the command and control of the commander of U.S. Northern Command. Their deployment was delayed while it's being challenged in court.
So that's what I want to talk about with our upcoming guest, because fat troops. And listen, that's why I was never in the military, right? I tried to go, and they were like, how much do you weigh? Oh, I'm sorry, brother, you can't get it. So, maybe I'd have a shot today, but now I'm too old. Unless I could pull a few strings with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Pete, what's up, sir? If I'm needed, I'll go. But otherwise, I'm having a great time here on the radio. But it doesn't change the fact that this is a big deal, right? You've got this big initiative a couple of weeks ago from Secretary of War Hegseth saying, hey, we're no more games here, no more wokeism, no more, soft, fluffy dudes. We're war fighters. And we're going to look the part, we're going to play the part, we're going to be the part. I love it. And I'm all for it. Well, it's going down in Texas. And this is what's happening after he said he was tired of seeing fat troops who give the military a bad look in the speech that he gave on September 30th. Well, after the speech, we've got some National Guards across the country that are taking action on that. And the Texas National Guard put a social media post up saying standards are back at the Department of War. And Texas is following suit with that. So we're going to get into that with our guest when we return. Keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
What do we know about this new change in how the Trump administration is combating?
We're going to talk about cartels and whatnot momentarily. But I want to continue my conversation about fat troops, because this fat troop stuff is very, very interesting stuff to me. Right? Why? Because I have ADHD, and if I don't switch gears enough, I get stuck. So anyway, there's a small group of the 200 National Guard soldiers that were sent to Illinois last week that have been replaced for not being in compliance with the validation process in the Texas Military Department, and that was confirmed to a military news site called Task and Purpose over the weekend. The switch comes, following Secretary Hegseth's speech saying fat troops are giving the military a bad look. And this is, I think, a good thing for the military, in my opinion. But some people are up in arms about it. And I want to get some weigh-in here from somebody who knows what's going on in Texas a little bit more than I do, because he represents the Texas Policy Foundation. He's senior fellow there, and he's our guest right now. Ammon Blair, welcome back, sir.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. So I know that you specialize in border security, immigration policy, and you spent some time as a Border Patrol agent and an Army officer. And I want to start with the Army officer part before we talk about, the war on drugs and how it's materializing in the conflicts with the cartels with fat troops, because I think while it's a humorous story, it's one that I think is important and one that has implications internationally, despite the jokes. Ultimately, I think it sends a message, that America is back in business. Your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, the pictures that we saw online that went viral, it was because the ABC News took pictures of them offloading. So that shows that Texas Military Department did not do their due diligence in validating whether the soldiers met height and weight requirements in order to deploy. A majority of those soldiers came from state active duty orders or Operation Lone Star, which is the border mission. And so we actually at Texas Public Policy Foundation have been trying to fight this epidemic of obesity and in the military. In fact, we helped Representative Kerry Isaac draft a MAHA bill for the military department here in Texas. It was House Bill 4993, and that is because, as it stands now, 68% of your National Guard and Reserve soldiers are either fat or obese, and are not meeting the height and weight requirements.
That's scary. And honestly, that sounds like America at large, 68% of us being fat, right? I always see videos with, people from other countries, just looking at women who might be overweight and going, what is wrong in America? Like, what are they feeding these people? And, you kind of get used to it. You laugh at it and whatnot. But when you're seeing, people that, and again, the people I'm looking at, these are big guys. They look like bouncers outside of a bar, but they all have a little bit of a gut on them, and they're all probably all north of 200 pounds. Big dudes, but they could likely each, lose 30 pounds and still be just as big and probably more effective. So I get what you're saying, and you're right. We do have an epidemic of obesity in our country at large, and a microcosm of that is obesity in our military. How are you guys taking this on? Because obviously you said you've been tackling it.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried. We worked with some of the National Guard soldiers also have their own gyms here, and we've been trying to work with them to try to get soldiers free gym memberships. In fact, that's what the bill did. It allowed soldiers. So the problem is National Guard soldiers drill 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. The rest of the time they are up to their own devices in terms of their physical fitness. What they put in their mouth, how they eat, all of their habits. They're not being overseen by your non-commissioned officer or your officers on a daily basis like you are on active duty. You don't have the resources, the tools necessary. You don't have gyms. You don't have any of this. You don't have structured mandatory PT, and so you're kind of left on your own devices, and yet you have to still meet the same requirements as active duty. And so it takes a more disciplined soldier to be in the National Guard to meet the same requirements as active duty. And unfortunately, we're not there. And I'll give you a big reason. A majority of the soldiers, like I said, that went on this mission came from Operation Lone Star. Well, if you're a National Guard soldier on Operation Lone Star, you're on state active duty orders. Unfortunately, for those soldiers, you are not covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for health insurance. Since it's state active duty, you're only a temporary state employee. Therefore, you're only covered on workers' comp from the time that you go to work, and that's only 10 hours a day. So outside of your work hours, you aren't covered. So the general officers in Texas made it that company commanders could not force soldiers to conduct PT or train outside of working hours. And so what that has done is called kind of a ripple effect. in terms of all the health and everything else. When you're sitting at a Humvee, staring at a river for 10 hours a day, and very limited mobility, then it's incumbent on you to take even more of a step to go out and work out on your own, since it can't even be mandated by your company commanders on active duty. So that's kind of we created the situation, unfortunately. And then as well as we didn't do our due diligence in terms of making sure that when they got on active federal orders, like in this case, that they actually met federal requirements. So what probably ended up happening is they pencil whipped it. They lied.
Yeah. So, and I get that. People saying, hey, look, I'm here. I got to do a job. I've been called. Time to go. It's go time. But ultimately, what's the solution here? Is, with these limitations you just mentioned, is it to lobby the government to make sure there's resources there? Is it to lobby, the state government? What's the answer?
Yeah, I mean, we tried. We like I said, we worked with the Maha Caucus here in this Texas legislature. We worked with our House of Representatives. We worked with the Senate. Unfortunately, and this is weird. Everyone can go watch the testimony from Texas Military Department Senator Representative and testified not in support of this bill. They testified not in support of assistance, and that is because they don't want oversight. So the bill mandated that the legislature actually hold the military department accountable. If you're going to do what you're saying you're going to do, we probably need to see some accountability. It's just like because I served a little over 22 years in the military. So whenever we deployed for war, we'd have to go to a pre-mobilization site. And we had to get validated by active duty soldiers, usually like from 1st Army, to determine whether we are capable of actually conducting combat operations. You're not just going to send someone there untrained. And so we had to have a third party validating that. So that took away all corruption. It took away any ways or means that we could cheat our way forward. Unfortunately, maybe that's what may end up happening, that Pete Hegseth may have to have active component soldiers or those on active guard reserve conduct the PT tests of these National Guard units and then hold them accountable. I know when I joined the Department of Homeland Security as a Border Patrol agent, our PT tests were video recorded for this very reason, so that there's no way that we could contest and say, no, you cheated, or I didn't cheat, or you didn't count that rep. And so maybe the system right now is somewhat broken, and it allows for all these to get through the cracks. And so we may have to go to the same way we validate soldiers going to war, to validate soldiers to see if they're actually ready to even go to war or lethal.
Got it. All right. Well, it's a start. I mean, it sounds like a problem that is going to take a while for us to figure out, but action is being taken. Wish there was an easier solution. Ammon Blair, stick with me. We're coming right back. We're going to continue our conversation and find out what's up with the war on drugs vis-a-vis the cartel. Amigos, we're coming back with Ammon Blair and me, Rich Valdes. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
What do we know about this new change in how the Trump administration is combating drug smuggling and drug cartels?
Yeah, this just came in within the last few minutes. Scripps News confirming that the White House sent a memo to Congress informing them that the president has designated people involved in drug smuggling, drug cartels as, quote, unlawful combatants, and that the broader drug war is now, quote, an armed conflict. Now, White House officials stressing that this is not necessarily a new policy. It's going back to some of those strikes we saw against boats that were alleged to be involved in drug smuggling activities in the Caribbean last month. This is sort of the legal justification that they have to provide Congress for why they struck. We know of at least 3 strikes that took place, killing everyone on board in those on those boats. But experts on this would say that this is a pretty significant escalation of the president's crackdown on drugs and drug smuggling. Defining the war on drugs as a, quote, armed conflict means that a country can kill enemy fighters even when they pose no imminent threat, detain them indefinitely without trials, and even prosecute them in military courts. So again, you see this statement from the White House here suggesting that this is just the president delivering on his promise to take out cartels and eliminate national security threats. Certainly something that's developing just a few moments ago, so we'll continue to report on it and bring you anything back more that we learn.
All right, that is a report from Scripps News Network, and I want to get some reaction to this from Ammon Blair. Ammon Blair is senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and he spent over 2 decades with the United States Border Patrol and as an Army officer as well. Ammon Blair, when I hear this, I think it's music to my ears, right? The fact that we've now taken this out of the realm of law enforcement and brought it into the area of treating these people as military enemy or unlawful combatants. Your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. You know, the Marine Corps teaches in their tactics manual that how we view the operational environment determines how we view the operational environment determines how we operate in it. And unfortunately, forever, just like you said, we have viewed the cartels as just criminals. However, when you look at the data, Mexico ranks among the world's most violent conflict zones. They're only behind right now Palestine, Myanmar, and Syria. That's it. And in fact, they're the second most dangerous country for civilians in the entire world. Out of 193 countries that were analyzed, they are second. And these numbers are not even coming from the U.S., so it's not a U.S. bias. However, we continue to view them as criminals, but anytime I talk about the cartels, I always ask, and I'll put up a video, like if I'm speaking at an event, and I'll put up a video and what I'll do is I put like Arabic words in the bottom, and then I'll put like a call to prayer. And then immediately people are like, oh yeah, those are terrorists. And oh man, we need to get them. And then when you tell them that the Mexican cartels, something shifts. We have this unfortunate ideology or an understanding that the cartels, regardless of how many people they've actually killed due to the opioid crisis, or how many people they continue to kill on a daily basis in Mexico, we still only consider them less than the Italian mafia. And so right now, the cartels are actually a hybrid threat by every operational measure as determined by the military. They control territory. They command loyalty through terror. They run parallel governments. They control almost 80% of Mexico. They tax, adjudicate, and even protect local populations like in Sinaloa. And their power rests on corruption and espionage. They operate inside the U.S. like foreign service agencies. Their technology outpaces our Department of Homeland Security. That is why U.S. Northcom was given the charge to take over the border mission in Operation Control the Border. The cartels have outmanned, outgunned, outfunded, and outmaneuvered the Department of Homeland Security since its inception in 2002. And so, but yet we still continue to look at them through this eyes. And I just did want to make a mention earlier. You said the war on drugs, and I kind of want to get your audience and everyone to understand that this is not a war on a commodity. This is not a war on that. This is actually a war on an enemy who utilizes narcotics as a form of chemical warfare to destabilize our societies and at the same time reap massive amounts of financial gain. And a lot of this is they're also proxies. They're proxies for the CCP. Just as was done to China from the British Empire. And then just like what Mao did to his own people, the opium wars. China is doing the exact same thing. They're conducting drug warfare on the United States using the cartels and their networks throughout the United States to destabilize each and every one of our communities and at the same time make as much money as humanly possible.
Ammon Blair, I think people, when they hear it in those terms, they realize, wow, so Trump's really doing something good here. And I think you're right. I was going to go the route of asking you, being that you spent 20 years with the Border Patrol and in the Army, if when you cross the border, it looks like you're in a war zone, or does it look like you're, on a police raid? And I'd be curious to know your answer.
Oh, 100%. When you go across the border, look, the cartels recently just sent a lot of the Sicarios to the Ukraine-Russian war to learn drone warfare. When you go down there, drones are everywhere. We have thousands of incursions of drones inside the United States. They have belt-fed machine guns on their trucks.
Mm-hmm.
They're conducting. They have IEDs, roadside bombs. Every way that you think of the Middle East, how the wars were, whether in Operation Iraqi Freedom or Enduring Freedom, and whenever I talk to my veteran friends, I was like, what were the tactics that they used there? What were the weapons of choice? What were the tools that they were using? What are the current tools using in our current war in Ukraine and in Russia? Mm-hmm. You can find every single one of those things in Mexico. So in certain regions, you can go and you're like, wow, this is a war. But a lot of times people don't do that. They have such tunnel vision. They'll go to, I'm going to Mexico City. Life is beautiful. How about you go talk to one of the avocado farmers who's getting bombed by drones and ask him whether his life is beautiful? Where if he doesn't side with the Mexican cartels, he now has to have the Mexican military do a presence patrol or patrol alongside his farm trucks to distribute just avocados to the United States, just so we can, in the U.S., can have our avocado toast.
Wow.
So unfortunately, so it depends on what area you're at. Like I said, there was a really good map that was leaked in 2019 under the AMLO administration that showed that 57% of all populated areas inside of Mexico is completely controlled by the cartels. Okay. And then 23% of that is under war. And that the country at that time period only had control of 19%. And so they showed, it was Daniel Horowitz out of the Blaze, he showed a comparison between Afghanistan and how much the Taliban controlled at that time period versus Mexico. And the cartels had more control of Mexico than the Taliban had of Afghanistan.
So what's the next step? Is this a threat? Or just kind of like a warning shot to say, hey, look, our next step is sending in Navy SEALs to take you out?
Yeah, unfortunately, look, we have a trade deal. We are in a trade deficit. Many people say that we have the upper advantage. We actually don't. We can't even feed ourselves. Right now, we are dependent on Mexico and Canada and those in our trade agreements in order just to feed Americans. And that is all due to regulations and everything else like that you could get onto it on another show. Like you said, you have ADHD and want to go down that rabbit hole. But right now, as it stands, we are dependent on Mexico for many things. Auto parts. We've offshored and nearshored almost single thing that we need for our livelihoods. Mm-hmm. And so when we know that the cartels control not just narcotics, they control every aspect of Mexican society, from agriculture, from their electricity, their own internet services, control inside of the oil industry, you name it. And so when we're trading for commodities, a majority of those imports are either controlled by the cartels or being extorted by them. So we are literally trading with foreign terrorist organizations in order for us to live.
Right. No, I get that. Folks, we're on with Ammon Blair, and a sobering conversation about the state of affairs at our southern border and really the global state of affairs of the cartels and how much of a challenge they present, how they're being used as a tool to destabilize the United States through narco warfare, addicting our people and killing Americans the same way without ever having a Chinese communist or anybody else who hates America set foot on our soil. Really, really is a problem, and grateful to President Trump for taking this action. Hopeful to see more as it comes in the future. Ammon Blair, let everybody know how they can keep in touch with you and follow you online.
Sure, yeah. So I don't have social media, but you can follow us at texaspolicy.com. You can see all of our research, all of our testimonies. We've testified about this non-international armed conflict multiple times, whether that's in Congress or in our state legislature. So everyone can go in there, and also our social media.
Outstanding. Ammon Blair, thanks for your time. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you, sir.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Godspeed.
You bet. Amigos, we come back. Your thoughts, your calls, and conversations in the speed round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And after the guest goes, we love to check in with you, the American people, weighing in on a number of topics. Open phones across America, time-honored tradition here on this program, Open Phone America. Larry King started that a long time ago. Jim Bohannon carried that torch for many years. And now you and I get to make radio magic live and national every night. And we're going to do it right now. We're going to start with William calling from Van Buren, Arkansas, WKIM. Go right ahead, William. You're on with Rich Valdes. Welcome.
Good morning. Good night, whichever one it may be. How y'all doing tonight?
Good evening. Wonderful. Thank you.
I got two topics I want to talk about. One is Crawford County, Arkansas, at our DOT station. Saturday morning, they busted a truck with $3.5 million with marijuana.
Wow.
And the Razorback football team. Why we can't keep a coach?
Well, talk to me about the first one. What's going on with all this weed?
Well, they done busted over about 1 million pounds of weed coming through Arkansas at that one scale house already this year.
Wow. Sounds like, a major operation that's gone kind of south, right?
Yeah.
This is mom and pop growing stuff in the backyard.
Yeah, I said they're slowing it down, but my God, man, it's just crazy on how all these drugs is coming through. And there's got to be a way of putting a stop to it one way or another,
Yeah, I don't know. If there was, I think we would have probably implemented it. I don't know that there is.
Yeah.
It's the the age-old complaint you hear from the cartels is, look, we wouldn't sell any drugs if you guys didn't want them so badly, right? They always complain about the demand in the United States being so severe that they're forced into business. And I would say we're probably their biggest customer. So I don't know. Maybe they're onto something. Now, tell me about the other thing you got.
The Arkansas Razor football team, right? After Sam Pittman lost, and I'm not saying he lost, as the team lost to Notre Dame when they played the very next day, he got fired. And they put Bobby... what's his name, back in charge, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't follow football, but what are your thoughts? Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a bad thing because it's not a coach's fault that they lose a lot, that they lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame was ranked number 1, and we're ranked down here in a very low score, right? And here's the problem. They fired a man that was doing good, just like they done Houston Nutt, and they can't keep a coach because they don't want to. They act like they don't want to win a championship or something, and I don't get that. You know what I mean?
Why are they so quick to fire the coach? Is this to protect some other person in the organization that doesn't want to take the blame for their team not winning?
Yeah, I mean, look, the coach it's just like your show. You can only do so much. A coach can only do so much. And if the players don't get out there and perform their best, then what can you do, right? You can't do nothing without the producer, without the people running the boards, without the people answering the phones.
And without the people listening.
Do what?
And without the listeners, right? No show without listeners.
Right. So unless you're doing your job well and the other people are doing their part, how can you have a successful team?
Yeah, I hear that. Everybody playing a part. Makes sense to me. I just got a lesson on Arizona sports from William. Thanks, brother. Shout out to Van Buren, Arkansas, WKIM, Arkansas. Forgive me. And I want to take a pause right here. We're going to come right back. Montana, Montreal, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Monday night. Open phones across America. I want to go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana. KOFI in the building. Go right ahead, sir.
Hi, Roger.
No, Rich.
Excuse me.
Roger's off tonight.
Rich, excuse me. Thank you. Okay.
Roger.
I wanted to say the RFK Jr.'s got to go. He really does. I mean,
Why is that?
He's losing it bad. Well, up in Canada, you know, their currency is only worth 71 cents to our dollar. And then we got a tariff against them. And they got a medical system that's failing. They can't pay their doctor bills. It's just they can't keep doctors. So they have to import doctors from other countries. And not only that, there's more infectious disease coming in through the airport systems. And because the communist nations can migrate.
What does that have to do with
Canada.
RFK Jr.?
Well, okay, what really gets me is his last comment on Tylenol, how if infants will get autism if they are circumcised. It was last Friday. He says this is malarkey. But
I didn't hear that one.
Infants, when they're born, they don't give them Tylenol. They give them a little sugar water. Now, Hebrews or whatever, they'll use a little wine during their circumcision, but they don't do that with children here. And autism is kind of a nice thing. It's just if you think outside of the box. Some of the greatest, it's the same thing as ADHD. I mean, your mind is always coming up with great solutions, and the best thinkers have autism. So you want to be dumbed down and just have a world of a computer AI just rule the world?
Well, Frank, I don't know. I don't know that autism is a good thing. I think you might see some instances like Elon Musk and others where you have people that have autism and are able to be successful. But ultimately, I think if we can end autism, we probably should. For some people, they become totally non-functional. But interesting, this link between circumcision and autism. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.